This is Sarah Heredia, and you are listening to the Freely You podcast. Our time together is meant to inspire you to think bigger and empower you to live your life in a way that makes you proud to be you. I believe that the only box you should fit in is the one that you build for yourself, and I'm here to help you lay the foundation. My journey has taught me that we all deserve to create our own definition of success while meeting ourselves with love and a playful curiosity. My goal is to provide practical tools and fresh perspectives so you can rewrite your story, start living your life on purpose, and ultimately become more freely you. Hello there, and thank you for joining me on the Freely You podcast. As always, I appreciate you being here, and I have a good conversation that I hope is going to help some of you navigate maybe some of the hardships that you're having in your life, or maybe those big moments where you're like, oh my God, why is this all happening right now? Like, why? It feels like so much. So today we are talking about ego death. And the irony behind this conversation is that I was telling my workout partner this morning, I was like, this is actually like the first week that I haven't had a podcast idea like drop in, which thankfully that's been the case, because starting a podcast, that was my biggest fear, is that I was not going to be able to think of topics to speak on. Luckily for me, I did start a Word doc like when I first started, and I just like jotted down a bunch of ideas of like things that I would feel comfortable talking about. And so today when I pulled up that Word doc, I saw ego death and I was like, oh yeah, that's the one. Just a casual little conversation on ego death. So that's where this conversation is going today. And yeah, this is a big one. So I personally have experienced ego death twice that I was aware of, okay? And I'm sure this has happened many a times before those two times that I can identify, but that was before I A, knew what it was, B, knew how to identify it. And yeah, now I actually believe that I am currently in the middle of my third ego death. The difference now is that I can actually see it for what it is, and it's just allowing me to kind of be an observer of some of the things that are coming up in my life that need to be reevaluated, and that I need to decide, is this something that can come with me to my next step, my next level, or not? And so that's what I want to share with you, because the goal is for you to, first of all, be able to identify when you're in this situation, because it can be incredibly overwhelming if you don't hold awareness around what it is. But then secondly, and honestly most importantly, is for you to look at it in a positive light, because it sounds dark, right? It sounds heavy, like it has the word death in it. So it sounds so intense, because it is. And it is required of us to continue on our path of growth. And honestly, it is in our ego deaths that we have the biggest up levels of our lives. Like a lot of times that is when the quantum leap happens. That is when we see things really shift for us. So before we get too far into it, if you're sitting there going, okay, but what is it? Let's start there. And I'm not going to lie, this conversation is from me, from my heart to you. I have absolutely not a single note on this, so we're winging it here. And I think that's better for me, because I could talk to you all day about like, what is the ego and what does it actually mean? And how do you know if you're acting in your ego or not? And I want to simplify all of it for you, because I think that the ego can be really confusing. And I also think that a lot of us have a misperception of what the ego is. And I think that it gets a really bad rap when our ego is actually there to help us. It's there to keep us safe. I mean, that really is the role that the ego is always playing. So our ego essentially it's our identity, and it becomes our personality a lot of the times. And it is there to protect us but it's developed based on our experience. Okay. So when we're born, when we come out of our mother's womb, we are the purest form of self. Okay. We have no outside. We are just us. We are just our purest being that we will ever be, because nobody has influenced us at this point. We haven't learned anything about the world. We don't have any expectation of ourselves or what we should be and what life should look like. But that shifts very quickly. Like literally within our first year of life, our ego starts developing, our identity, our perception of ourselves and who we believe that we are. So our ego is really based on external factors, right? It's things we're taught. It's how people makes us feel. It's the way our body looks in the mirror. It's our career, our job title. It's the car we drive. It's the house we live in. It's our Instagram feed and how good it looks. Like it is our perception of ourselves and what we believe to be socially acceptable. So we all have an ego, and some of us are better at managing it than others. And so an unbalanced ego or an unhealthy ego is the person that is like so consumed with their self and their appearance and all the things that they have. And that's when you hear like, oh my God, they're so egotistical. The ego, though, it's not always like in your face like that. Sometimes the ego is just simply who we believe we are. And in turn, patterns that we've picked up along the way, beliefs that we've picked up along the way, perceptions that we've picked up. And so I don't believe that the ego is all bad. I believe that the ego plays a very important role in our growth and just in the way that we navigate our lives. And sometimes the ego helps us out. Like sometimes we do have a lot of pride, or we have a belief in ourselves that, you know, we're good at public speaking, or maybe we think we're beautiful. Like maybe we do think that maybe our car makes us feel really good about ourselves. So sometimes the ego actually works in our favor because it makes us feel good about ourselves. It gives us like some external validation that what we're doing is right. So when ego death comes into play, generally it is when we're going through a big transition in our life, or when something is shifting in our life. And a lot of times in those moments, what's required of us is to also shift, to also transition, maybe to grow in a really big way. And so it's in those moments that we can no longer take parts of our ego with us. Like those pieces of our ego no longer align with where we're going. And what happens in those moments is it feels like a literal death. And that is the best way I can describe it. And the first time I experienced this, when I didn't have a word for it, luckily I was working with a spiritual coach that was like, oh, this is what's happening to you right now. But I felt so, honestly, like there was so many things in my life that I was like defeated. Like, why am I like this? Why am I still doing this? Why do I still have these habits and these patterns? Why am I still showing up like this, even though I've done so much work? And it's because it's ingrained in us, right? It's years and years and years of conditioning and us responding in a way that's ultimately there to protect us and keep us safe. And it's our coping mechanisms. It's what we've learned to do to keep ourselves safe. And in that moment, it felt like it literally felt like there was no hope for me. And it was like, I know I have this gigantic vision and I know exactly where I want to go. And I can't help but every single day, all day, every day, see every little thing that I am doing, every little way that I am getting in my own way. That my old beliefs, my old habits, these things I've been carrying with me for so long
are not aligned with where I'm going. And that requires us to shift essentially who we are. So that's a big, gigantic transition. That is a lot for us to take on. And it means that we're growing. It means that we're stepping into something bigger. So I'm sharing this with you because if you've been in that place where you're so frustrated with yourself, maybe things that you do, maybe, the way that you respond to stressful situations, maybe some of your reactions that are, maybe you're shutting down, maybe you're overreacting, and you know that it's something that you want to change about yourself, but you're having a hard time figuring out how to. It's actually something to be celebrated. And I know that it does not feel like that in the moment. But what I can tell you is that it's in these moments when we are like looking at ourselves through a completely different lens, right? Because for a lot of us, a lot of the things that we're doing, it's like, well, we've been doing them forever, so we've been fine with it, obviously, right? Like it hasn't impacted us that bad. There hasn't been this burning desire to change this thing about ourselves. Maybe it's kind of always in the back of your mind, like, oh, I should look at that at some point. Maybe you have thought about it, but when we're experiencing an ego death, it becomes so crystal clear that this is not working for me anymore. All of these trauma responses, all of these unhealed things that I haven't dealt with or that I pushed aside, all of these parts of my life that I've acted like it's not that bad or it's not that big of a deal, and then all of a sudden it just all bubbles up to the surface, and it can feel incredibly overwhelming. And that was my experience with the first 2 times that I had it. It was like, oh my God, when is this going to end? This time around, what I believe I'm in right now, my 3rd known ego death, feels very different for me. And the reason why is because it does feel like that. It does feel like there's a lot of things that are coming to the surface. I'm being shown so much, like literally every single day. And I'm looking at it as like, I'm just being shown what I can no longer use as a coping mechanism. Ways of being that are no longer good for me. Relationships that they have to shift or it has to be done. Like, nothing can go, like there's no stone unturned in this situation. And this is actually like, there's a lot going on in the solar system and with the new moon and all the things. This is happening collectively right now as well. So if you have felt like that, if it's like, oh my God, I've been seeing stuff too, it could be that. Or it could be like this shedding that is required of you for your next level. And that is the best way I can describe it. It's like this upheaval. Like it's like, for me, most of my trauma lives in my throat. And I haven't had any blockages in my throat for years at this point. And that's been coming back up for me. And it's been, wow. It's been crazy to realize that I lived with that for so long without even like knowing that it was an issue or knowing that like this isn't normal. You don't have to feel like this every day, because now it feels so intense that I literally can't deny it. It feels like I could like choke at any given moment. And it's when these things are coming up. It's like when I'm supposed to be seeing something, my body is reflecting that to me by essentially blocking my throat chakra. So that's another thing that can happen, is that you can start feeling in your body, maybe it's in your gut, maybe it's in your heart, it doesn't have to be in your throat. That's just specific to me. But sometimes it is like that feeling of like something is off here. And that was actually when this happened to me last year. That's where it was. It was in my solar plexus, which is a chakra that's in your stomach. And it was like, I felt so, it was like my gut was always telling me something was wrong. And anytime that I was acting out of alignment with where I was trying to go, my gut would it would be like that sinking feeling. So our body is always keeping the score. And again, this is why I'm like on my soapbox, like trying to get you to meditate and connect with your body, because it is so important. And it helps us navigate these things, because before, when I had went through this, I had no idea what was happening. I just thought I was completely overwhelmed, in over my head, like drowning in my own shit. And that's not the case. It's honestly, it's like an initiation. It's like you say you want this and you say you're stepping into this. You're saying that you're ready for this relationship, for this new career, for love, for whatever, for abundance, for whatever it is that you are wanting and seeking in your life. It's like you're saying that you want these things, but your actions don't align with the things that you want. And we're shown it over and over and over again. And we can feel it in our body if we are in tune, in touch with ourselves. And I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, like the self versus the ego, the authentic self. And, that is when we're born. That is our most authentic self, the most true we'll ever be to ourselves, because we've had zero influence. And as we, go through life and have different experiences and relationships and interactions and all of those things, that's how we start to develop our ego. And I'm sure you've heard of like spiritual enlightenment, right? Like being more spiritual, getting in touch with your spiritual side. Spirituality is presence. Okay, spirituality is right here, right now. It's not being in the mind, in the past, in the future. That is the ego. That's where the ego lives. The ego lives in the past experience. All these things happened and this is the way I am. Or the future, the worry, the uncertainty, all of those things. That is the ego. Being connected with yourself, your true self, is the present moment. There is no past, there is no future. Like that is you in your most spiritual, true form, is in the present moment. And that's why it's so important to spend time with yourself. That's why it's so important to take breaths, to connect with the body, because that is when we get the guidance. That's when we feel at peace. That's when we aren't worried about the future. That's when we're not sitting here and going over the past and replaying, the thing that we said in our mind and, oh, how did we do that? And we'll never live it down. That is not where we want to be. We want to be in the present moment. So maybe you personally have experienced an ego death. Maybe you're very familiar with this. If so, I would love to hear if your experience differs from mine in any way. And maybe you're having like this aha moment of like, oh my God, I've totally been through this. This has happened to me. Maybe you're in it right now. Or maybe the universe is just a little crazy at the moment, making us all feel some sort of way. But really being able to identify that this is what is happening. And again, like being so present and so aware of yourself, connecting with yourself, that you're not getting in your head and you're not like telling yourself these stories of I'm doomed, like this is just the way I am, or here I am again, like so stressed, so overwhelmed, can't figure it out, don't have the answers. Maybe you are being shown exactly what you need to see, and maybe it is all happening at once. Maybe it feels like it's coming to a head, because it is. because there are layers of yourself that have to be shed. There are pieces of your ego that can't come with you to that truer form of you as you move through your life in a way that is true to you and who you are and who you want to be, not what the world has conditioned you to be, not what your childhood conditioned you to be, not what your relationship conditioned you to be, not what, public education taught you to be, who you really are at your core. Maybe you are being shown over and over and over again every area that you are out of alignment with your truest self. And that can be a hard pill to swallow, my friend, because at the end of the day, that's a fucking invitation if I've ever seen one. And it's an initiation. It's a choice at the end of the day. You don't have to see it for what it is. You don't have to choose differently. But here is what I can guarantee you, because this I feel like is what was happening to me for an extended period of time, is I was being shown the things and I refused to look at them. So you know what that left me with? Feeling constantly unsettled, feeling depressed, feeling anxious about where my life was going, feeling doomed about if anything would ever change for me, because the way that I was living, the way that I was showing up, the way that I was not expressing myself and being true to myself was the thing that was hindering me, and it was the thing that was never going to allow me to move forward until I took a really honest look at those things and chose something different. And when you can do that, when you can look at this as, okay, this is the ultimate test and it's being laid out in front of me and I have two choices here. You choose the hard choice. You choose to step in. You choose to try harder. You choose to connect more with your true self and to start taking action that reflects that. Is it the easy path? No. Is it the path that's going to get you where you want to go so much faster? Is it the path where endless possibilities happen? Is it the path that's going to get you closer to your next level and your next level and your next level? So we talk, personal development. This is like my own little pitch that I'm going to go on here. Personal development, in my opinion, is all about that forward motion. I love it. It's beautiful. I love the strategy. I love having tangible tools that I can put into place and into practice of how to get better. That's all fine and dandy. Your spiritual path, your spiritual journey, that doesn't come with the set of rules. That doesn't come with you do this 1, 2, 3 step and then you're enlightened and awoke and life is fucking bliss. No, that's not how it works. Your spiritual path is a journey within. It's a journey back to yourself. It's a journey of stripping back all of these layers that's been piled on us over the years and getting back to who we are and who we're meant to be in our soul, that sweet little baby. What did that baby come here to do before the world told it what to do? That is the spiritual journey. So yes, do all the personal development things. I will cheer you on day in and day out for that. And there comes a point that you have to take it, 100 levels deeper and start connecting with yourself and start taking a real look in the mirror and start asking yourself really challenging questions and start connecting with your truth. And this happens when we slow down. This happens when we stop fighting it, when we stop resisting it. And that is as overwhelming as the death of your ego can be. It is, I would so pick that, because just to give you reference, I would say this is maybe a month span. That's how mine has kind of looked. It's weeks. It's weeks on end of the same thing, the same emotions, the same feelings coming up, seeing the same things over and over, and the frustration. It can be an extended period of time. I would pick that intense, extended period of time every single day over having years of avoiding it, years of ignoring our inner voice, our intuition, what we know we're capable of, what we know we deserve, but we don't take the time to slow down, or we don't want to be in this place that feels really uncomfortable or feels really expansive or feels really overwhelming. And so we just stick doing what we always know because it feels safe in our body, because it's what we've always done. But we're prolonging where we're going, and we're extending our misery, essentially. Whoever you are meant to be, that's not going to change. So as long as you're not aligning to that version of yourself, as long as you're not showing up in the way that you are meant to, deep down, you're going to have hardship. You're going to have turmoil. Shit's going to feel like you never have the answer. That is the truth of it. So embrace these periods of time where it feels like everything's bubbling to the surface, where shit is hitting the fan right and left. Embrace that period of time, because on the other side of that, oh my God, it's this burst of growth. But beyond that, it's like this relief of like not fighting against yourself every single day, like being more at peace in your mind and in your body. And that is alignment. And that is, that is enlightenment, is the ultimate version of that, right? It's essentially like perfection. It's everything. You see everything as it is. You know exactly what is meant for you. You see the world as it is. And that is a big goal for a lot of us. But I believe that even if I actually don't know if I believe that we can achieve enlightenment in this lifetime. I'm on the fence about that one. That'll be another podcast. But I do believe that we can get closer and closer and closer to that. And that requires us to often do some things that make us feel really uncomfortable, or start looking at our problems in a way that is more intentional than we have in the past, feeling a lot more of our feelings that we haven't been willing to in the past. It's in these moments that feel so hard, that is where the progress is made. That is where the growth lies. So if you have experienced ego death, if this is like speaking to you, can you please let me know? Because this is something that I've like shined a light on for my clients. And it's that like light bulb, like, oh my God, I see everything so clearly now. Like, this is all just a test. And all you have to do when you find yourself in these situations is lean in. Lean in to you, to what is meant for you, to what deep down you know is meant for you, even if it's not the easiest path. And this is going to make everything in your life shift. This is going to make everything in your life better. If you have big pockets in your life that feel so bad right now, whether that's your career or your relationships, maybe it's where you live, maybe it's your relationship with your family, maybe it is unhealed trauma, whatever it is that you're carrying, and whatever it is that feels so off in your life right now, this is the answer. To look at it and to really get clear on what is required of me, and what of this identity that I've been carrying, this ego, this personality that I've created for myself, what is not working anymore, and what just has to stay behind. You get clear on that, and you won't have those pockets in your life anymore. Life is going to feel so much easier and so much lighter. Even though it's not easy in the moment, big picture, you're going to have zero regrets. I promise you that. So I love you. I see you. And just know, if this is something that you are going through or have been through, it says a lot about you and where you are at in your spiritual journey, in your personal alignment, in your growth, in your, let's call it personal development, because it's like the next step of personal development, I would say, is getting into that spiritual realm. So that is my talk on ego death for today. Thank you for being here, and I'll chat with you next week.
You guys, thank you so much for being here today. You actually have no idea just how much it means to me. If you enjoyed this episode or believe in my mission, can you do me a solid and leave me a review, follow, or share this podcast? It would be so greatly appreciated. Also, if you don't already, you can follow me on Instagram at freelysarahheredia. Sending you so much love, and I'll be talking to you soon.